value its quality, cost, and price. If we can do that as specialists in our area and we can work together in a collaborative manner, we certainly have all the opportunities to go global and to scale up our operations. With that, I would like to thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Shenaz. To become successful in the film industry or to come out with a very good movie, Vidya Balan has said entertainment, entertainment, entertainment. And in pharmaceutical industry, whether it is a regulatory affair or quality assurance, documentation, documentation, documentation. And even US FDA also stress on the documentation. Customer delightedness through the regulatory affairs is also the major challenge in front of us. And I think Dr. Shenaz has contributed in a big way where we can really make a brand India and which will contribute to serve the humanity. Thanks a lot for a beautiful presentation. And I request Satya Brahma to give the memento to Dr. Shenaz. Friends, we got the message from Raj Bhavan that exactly at 7:30, the governor is coming. And Dr. Mukesh Hariwala is going to present his presentation in front of him. And that's why this shift has been made. But now we are taking a break only for 15 minutes because many speakers are there who want to contribute for this brand India, creating a quality to serve the humanity. Thank you very much. So exactly at 5:45, we'll start the next session. Thank you very much. Please be seated. We are starting the next session. All participants are requested to come to the seminar hall. Okay, friends, managing this function, it took almost 3 months for Satya Brahma to organize his resources, inviting the speakers, the best ones in the industry. And again, in the evening, we are going to see the felicitation of the Pharmaleaders Award. And for all this thing, I think the management is required. And the next speaker, who is known as a management guru in pharmaceuticals. And we say generally management is not only the direction of the people, but also developing them to achieve their personal goals linked with organizational goals. We have today with us the great management guru in pharmaceuticals, who built the capacity of India by making world-class capacities in manufacturing pharmaceuticals. And that pharmaceutical company is Eisai Pharmaceuticals India Private Limited at Vizag, Visakhapatnam, Andhra Pradesh. We invite Shivkumar, Kunchithapatham, Managing Director of this company, to control all of us for next 25 minutes on Indian pharma industry challenges and key issues in partnership, alliances, and co-marketing. Shivkumar, please.
Good evening, friends. One afternoon, I have become a management guru, thanks to my friend. And I can tell you, I am no guru. I am just a practitioner. So what you're going to see is what I have been practicing for the last 30 years in the pharmaceutical industry. The topic which has been presented to me by Satya Brahma is essentially on challenges in managing partnerships and alliances in the pharmaceutical industry. But before that, I seek the indulgence of Sue Arden and Mr. François, because I have come ahead of you. And that is because of an emergency which has come up. So I really appreciate both of yours kind support. So, and what I'm going to talk is what I've actually experienced. Right from my time in Glaxo, I was looking after alliances with 3 companies. In my current job, a big part of my business consists of managing alliances. I have an alliance with a multinational, I have an alliance with a medium-sized Indian company, and I have an alliance with a large-sized Indian company. So this is all based on personal experiences, and I'm sure it's of interest to the participants here. I hope you enjoy what I'm going to say. So I will essentially take you through the flow. It's about how the pharma industry has evolved, and also talk about what I call as EMNCs, which are emerging multinational corporations, which is term now used for some of the Indian companies who are operating globally. And how is the world changing for MNCs, and especially in India? And how MNCs have changed their business models to suit the business requirements in different emerging markets. And what are the various alliances and mergers and acquisition business models, and what really makes alliances work? And that is something which is really important to make alliance succeed or fail. So let me just, without further ado, move on. We all know that Indian pharmaceutical market is a very attractive market, both in terms of size, in terms of growth. If you look at the current dollar, it's almost around $11 billion, growing at around 15%. And it has been growing for the last 4 or 5 years at a CAGR of 15%. That really is something which not many markets can claim. But the unique part of the Indian pharmaceutical market is how it is composed of. Early on in the 70s, before we had the process patent introduced, it was dominated by the multinational pharma companies. And then came the process patent, and then over the last 30 years, you have seen the industry completely changing its complexion, with now the Indian companies dominating almost 70% share, and is expected to remain at 60-40 even 7 to 8 years going forward. So what this clearly means is that if anyone wants to come to India and wants to make a business out of this, there is no choice but to collaborate. If you go alone, it's going to take a long time for you to build some critical mass, unless you acquire, like it has been done in the case of Daiichi and Piramal by Abbott. And going forward also, you can see that Indian pharmaceutical market is going to remain attractive. It's going to become the 10th largest. And this is something which has been attracting a lot of attention from all the multinational majors globally. Now, if you look at how the Indian companies have evolved over the last 25 years, early on it was the market dominated by MNCs, and then we had in the 70s the era of process patent being introduced. The price control came into being. Local companies started to build capacities. They became experts in reverse engineering, process re-engineering. They started to build their field force. They started to build their manufacturing capacities. And then they started to expand dramatically in the Indian pharmaceutical market in the 90s, 2000. And then 2000 onward, they have started to go outside. They are focusing on innovation. They are focusing on discovery research. So it's a complete shift from where they started to where they are now. So if you look at some of the key trends which have sort of been pushing the trends and opportunities, essentially you find One is geographic convergence, where Indian companies are moving out. If you look at Daiichi, or if you look at companies like Sun Pharma, almost 60% of the business comes from outside. So it makes more sense for them to do business outside than within the country. So that's one of the key shifts which is happening. Generic companies are moving into research. You have seen the Sun Pharma setting up a separate advanced research center. You have seen Piramal looking at launching an innovative molecule very soon. So you find generic companies are now on the mode of drug discovery. And lastly, you find that India has become a center for both manufacturing and also for development of generic products, especially for launching when you have the patents cliff happening in the US. So these are certain key trends and which presents opportunities and also have challenges. But things are also changing for the MNCs in the country. Early on, globally, it was blockbuster model, one product, $4 billion, grow, and then you defend, you harvest. And then they moved on because the research pipeline started to dry up, and then you had the second phase of Pharma 2, as it is called, where they moved away from the blockbuster model. They started to go into emerging markets, and they looked at specific business model for different countries. What would have been seen as sacrilege in the 1990s or 2000 is now common business activity for most of the MNCs. You take GSK, you take Pfizer. Example is Pfizer was the originator of atorvastatin, but recently they have launched rosuvastatin. So you can see how the mindset has changed. But then again, from that model, people are now looking at more patient-centric model, where you look at how you manage the patient outcomes, how you meet the unmet medical needs. So you find that it is moving from doctors towards the patient. And there is also the additional pressure of price looming for all the companies in developed markets. Britain, we have NICE, which is not really nice, only rejects products and cuts down prices. You have the Obama healthcare plan in the US, you had Germany cutting prices, you have Japan, new pricing mechanism. So everywhere there is a push on cutting down price. If it is not innovative, you will not get a good reimbursement. This is the reality for all the MNCs operating outside of India. So then it is left, when you come to a market like India, you have to collaborate. You might be big, even if you look at a company like Novartis, when they launched their new DPP-4 inhibitor, normally you've seen them collaborating with a multinational because you know the style, you know the culture. They completely turned the tables. They out-licensed the product to US Vitamins, then they out-licensed it to Piramal, and then I'm told they're going to give it to a third company. So this is complete change of business model. So what do MNCs look for when they come to India? They look for a market advantage with cost benefits. They're looking at drug discovery providers. They're looking at outsourcing market for manufacturing. And they're also looking for collaborative R&D. So you have the Ranbaxy GSK model. You have the Sun Pharma MSD model. So this is what MNCs look for. But they look for because there are certain advantages in working with emerging MNC companies in India. You have a vast talent pool, fantastic cost advantage, you have speed, they're very quick, being entrepreneurial, there is enough money available, and you have a very booming and flourishing local industry. So looks like they're made for each other, but is it so easy? Most of the alliances focus on manufacturing, R&D, marketing and distribution, and then you have lots of services which are happening these days. So generally you find these are the three avenues for the alliances happening in the Indian market. So if you look at mergers and acquisition, we had Sanofi buying Shanta, Abbott Piramal, we all aware of, Abbott Solvay, Sanofi Universal for OTC, again Reckitt Benckiser Paris for OTC, Wockhardt again for different reason Wockhardt sold out, but again it is in a field of OTC. So you find that lots of mergers and acquisition because there are attractive targets available in India. And then you have the global acquisition which have impact in India. You have Wyeth, Pfizer, Sanofi, Genzyme, Mylan Matrix. So there's a different ball game altogether. And then you have the alliances and partnership. And you can see on this slide, one company seems to be dominating quite a lot, and that is GlaxoSmithKline. And I worked in GSK for almost 25 years. Early on, you find they started to have alliances and they didn't have a great product pipeline for Indian market at that time. So you find way back in the 90s, they entered into tie-up with UCB and then now with Teva. So you have a lot of MNCs who are playing a lot of emphasis on collaborating with either MNCs or with local companies for advantage. My own company at the bottom, you can see Eisai, GSK, Eisai, Unichem, Eisai, Wockhardt. So you find that when companies come to India, if you really have to be big to go alone or you have to collaborate. There is no escaping that. And then you have the global alliances, which also have an impact. You have, for product sourcing, Astra, Torrent, Sanofi, Glenmark for R&D, for original product, Pfizer, Aurobindo, which I'm not sure is going further now, Sun MSD, Reddy, GSK. So all this is for sourcing products for India for emerging markets. The interesting thing which is happening now in alliances in healthcare, early on it was from pharma to the patients. Then it went from pharma to CROs, pharma to biotech, pharma to medical device. But now you find everything is related to patient outcomes. You are having a Google Health, G Healthcare, you find even Nintendo. So all of this is coming into a sort of a different melting pot where everything is to the benefit of the patient. So you find that lots of heterogeneous partnerships are happening to improve patient outcome, and that is going to be how it's going to go forward. So what makes alliances work? There has to be, of course, a cultural fit. Most alliances fail because people don't seem to understand the culture of each other. Of course, there has to be a business reason. There has to be a strategic fit. And then it has to also have an operational synergy, which is how complementary are the business models. So if these are not there, recipe for disaster. So if you look at the complexity and the degree of involvement from a simple vendor contract to a very complex mergers and acquisition, the level and degree of involvement depends on what type of a deal you're doing with an Indian company or vice versa. So this has to be kept in mind when you're looking at mergers and alliances. So if you look at the different cultures of an MNC and an emerging MNC, mostly global pharma have many projects to work on. So they said, okay, where is the best buck for the money? So they could only focus on a few. As Indian companies or emerging companies work at many projects, work at less number of projects, and sometimes they also look at not so great opportunities. Global pharma very data focused, Indian companies not so intense about data validation. Global pharma is a 5-day week. Once I remember our commerce minister saying that in France there is a 35-hour week, whereas in India you have a 35-hour day. So this normally happens in most Indian companies. Saturday, Sunday, the boss is called, you got to work. So this is a very different culture. MNCs have access to latest equipment and knowledge. Emerging market MNCs are little more strapped on that. And the project responsibility in a global pharma company is distributed among many, whereas it is not the case in an emerging pharma MNC. So when you look at the value being created, it is actually what you call as our pav bhaji as we eat every day. It must have culture, it must have synergy, it must have control. The right mix will give you the right pav bhaji. So the value is from this. This is something which people fail to understand. You can't just focus on control. It has to be culture, control, synergy. And I work for a Japanese company, and you know, Japanese are very, very slow in terms of taking a decision. But once taken, it is 200 kilometers per hour. But till you come to that level, it is maybe 0 to 10 kilometers per hour. So if an Indian company does not understand that, it's going to be a problem. So what do the MNCs bring? New product, new technology, investment. They have global market knowledge. They bring in quality systems. in their leadership team. Whereas what works for Indian companies is fantastic market knowledge, entrepreneurial. They have a huge pool of treatment naive population. The economy is growing, fantastic chemistry skills, low cost advantage, and an enormous field force. 7,000 is the field force of Piramal. Ranbaxy also 6,000. Most MNCs would be max around 1,500, 2,000. So if you really want more feet on the ground, you have no choice but to go to an Indian company, and that's what people are doing. So therefore, there are benefits of collaboration for both the Indian company and the MNC, wider portfolio of drugs for Indian company, better treatment options. A rep can make his call more profitable, higher share of voice, of course, improved quality of drugs and treatment. So there are benefits of collaboration and benefits of alliances. But what really spoils the game is how you do the deal. There are really big challenges, and I go and I face it every day when I deal with one Indian company and I deal with an MNC. So there are lots of issues which I have. A lot of my hair has gone off because of that only. It requires a lot of daily watering of the plant. Because the market is complex, there's issues on pricing, there's issues on patents, which really is now the buzzword. There are issues on technology, quality of documentation. Japanese want in this way, whereas DCGI wants in this way, or Unichem says I can only give in this way. So there are so many issues which happen, but at the end of the day, one who is able to manage it all well and stay calm in the chaos, he's the one who wins. So there are really challenges in managing alliances in emerging markets. And if you look at working with emerging MNCs, you have issues with data, issues with bioequivalent study. So what we have done now, early on, we engage with them, early on, much, much early, so you don't get surprises later on. You have issues of API supply. So rules of the game are explained much, much early to mitigate this. So also we need to make sure that we have alternate vendor supplies. Product quality is also from, sometimes I find from batch to batch keeps changing. How do you manage that? Regular check is needed. Intellectual property is a big problem. You find compulsory licensing be given for a reason which we never knew. So there are lots of issues. So when you work with the MNCs, you have to come with your eyes wide open. You can't say it's a walk in the park. There are challenges, but if you really meet them, there's going to be success. So some of the challenges in emerging market M&As, we know about valuation. Everyone wants big bucks after the Ranbaxy and Piramal deal. There are issues of targets. There is also now competition from the private equity guys. So there are also barriers to successful M&A strategy. Why do alliances fail? Most of the time it is about culture. There are numerous examples I can quote about egos coming the way because someone feels that this is not the way it is done in India, and someone doesn't feel this is really a norm in other countries. So there are issues of poor alliance management, issues of failure in technology, maybe the market potential is really overestimated. So some of the imperatives are we must have a well-defined reward risk structure, absolute planning and implementation, and communication is the key. Flexibility, Indian market is very changing. You need to be flexible, resources have to be committed upfront, and more important, we need to respect the organization behaviors, and of course the culture. So some of the key considerations, you need to really make sure you have the right partner, you have the optimal number of partners, you have really good relationship management, good negotiation in terms of the contracts and project management. Some of the best practices, I don't want to go through everything, but the key thing is we need to involve, which I've seen very, very crucial, is involve the alliance manager upfront. The deal happens between two company headquarters and the country manager is not involved. And that's where problems start to come. Early on, we must involve the alliance manager. And more important, if you strike the deal terms, in a proper way, it helps, because once the ink has dried, nothing much can be done. So some of the best practices really is all about communicating, making the expectation clear early on, and constant communication is the key. So in conclusion, alliances and partnerships are crucial for Indian pharmaceutical market. We have 3, we might have 6 going forward. Cultural, strategic, and operational fit is the key. Most important, expectations and the strategic objective have to be understood early on, and a lot of hard work in project management would ensure that the alliances work. Once again, thank you very much for your patience, and have a nice evening.
Thanks, Shivkumar, and I request Satya Brahma to give the memento. And as he said, every partnership should lead to the synergism, a win-win situation, and I think that is the key as far as the alliances and partnership is considered. Okay, thanks, Shivkumar. And we are coming to the next speaker, and today we are talking very high about supply chain management, which is the service to manage the inventory and which ultimately increasing the profitability and reliability in the minds of customers. We invite overseas expert personality on this topic, delivering the value in the supply chain. We invite Sue Arden, VP Life Sciences and Healthcare, Singapore.
Good evening, everybody. Okay, I'm not quite sure how to operate this. We'll give it a go. Thank you to the organisers for allowing us to participate in this prestigious event. DHL is an organisation that I personally worked for some 13 years. We've certainly got some large collaborations with a lot of the pharma guys, both MNC and Big Pharma, and also a lot of the Indian companies. So the presentation that I have today is really about where we think we can add some value. I think by maybe sharing some of the insights that we have in other markets, there might be some interest in doing some additional things with you in India. So, okay. Firstly, who is DHL? I think most of you would know that we're a global organisation with quite a large footprint. We have many different areas of the business, but the customer promise that we have is to actually be simple to do business with. So it's about producing an environment where we can engage customers easily. So it's about producing solutions that are sustainable, but more importantly, that the engagement is easy. From a healthcare perspective, we have various sectors within the organisation. Healthcare is a global sector. We have a sponsor at board level. What this basically means is that we have an opportunity to take the message in terms of solution development or investment to a very high level within the organisation very quickly. So in terms of healthcare, the aspiration is actually to be the logistics partner for healthcare, for the environment globally. We have a global infrastructure. We have a network that actually is positioned in a lot of the developing and also mature markets. So in terms of you and your product, it should have an infrastructure to allow you to get your product to market. Reliability and quality, we've heard from many of the presenters this evening that quality and reliability is key to your product. We understand that. We think that we've got the people that have actually been trained. We've listened to the customer. So we think that we've got something in terms of a logistics product that can actually provide value to your product. In terms of innovation, I mentioned before simplicity of solution. It's about being easy to work with. It's about taking complexity out of the market. With the collaboration, and I'll expand on that in a moment, we like to think that we have the voice of the customer, so we're actually creating something that is really what you need for your product. I mentioned before that we had trained personnel. We work with many different environments, emerging markets, mature markets, regulatory group, etc., etc. But in terms of community, we have a very large community within DHL. So they're logisticians that understand healthcare. It's not an IT box, it's a box that has medicine that needs to get to market in a reasonable condition. It has a time factor involved, etc. So globally, we have over 4,000 people that actually understand your product. So I mentioned before voice of customer. Globally, we've created a platform. We have global events once a year. They're hosted in each of the regions. Last year we had Shanghai, so Asia had an opportunity to host the event. Next year will actually be in the US. So basically the event will move from Europe to Asia to the Americas. And what we do is we invite customers to participate. We invite customers to actually share best practice. We hold workshops. In those environments, we share some of the solution development, but also importantly, get your feedback. So voice of customer to us, we create the platform. This is feedback from the last event that we had. And basically, I'm hearing a lot of common trends here in India in this environment in terms of some of the areas that people are focused on. So key takeaways from the last event for us, if we look at the top 5, really look at the cost, the efficiency of the market, focus on emerging markets. A lot of the big farmers, irrespective of the region that we look at, are still focused on developing markets. India, I've heard, is actually a market that has developed. I think that's possibly true, but there's also a lot that we can do in this market as well. Regulatory compliance, to help us understand that from a logistics standpoint, we actually have over 70 pharmaceutical people that focus purely on Q&A. They help us with our training, they help us with the DNA that we can actually instill in our people. And then, of course, direct to market. The focus that has been coming from the event in the last couple of years is telling us that people in the pharma world are looking for something that gets product to market faster, more efficiently, make sure that you can actually sell your products to the people that need them. We also create platforms locally. So whether we're talking country, whether we're talking globally, we also host events where we again invite people from the pharmaceutical manufacturing area to help us understand the market. This was a study that DHL supported with OPPI. This is some of the feedback. And again, some of the learnings. We hear a lot of comparison about India and China. There really isn't a lot of comparison in my view. Both markets are very, very different. India, certainly in terms of export, is very, very global, where China is still looking more at domestic market. But this just gives a snapshot of the differences in those markets. That's why I'm sharing it. So, direct to market, I mentioned, was one of the areas that was coming up. Basically, this is a case study that I wanted to share with you. We talked about how we bring value to market, and I think one of the things that we found in a couple of the countries, both mature and emerging markets, is that you have to be able to do things differently. You have to be innovative about the way that the product is getting to market. You have to look at what the regulatory compliances are, etc., etc. In this particular case, there was an opportunity with a manufacturer, and they were looking at ways that they could improve their supply chain. They had various acquisitions, so they had a lot of duplication. They had a lot of inventory sitting in locations where they couldn't see it, so the visibility was very low. And they also had areas in cash flow that they wanted to improve. So there was a project, we participated in that. We actually enlisted a lot of the support from our in-house consulting team, and we applied for the project. We were successful in that application. We certainly made some recommendations to create a transformation to the way that the product was getting through to market. I'm very pleased to say that we were able to achieve some very significant cost saving for the customer. We not only increased the visibility in terms of where the inventory was, we also created some rationalisation in terms of CFAs. Why would you have 3 in one state, etc., etc. The customer's been able to seek value or seek significant cost improvement to the tune of 10%. So what we're seeing is, again, as we have more mass going through this particular solution, that we can actually improve even further. So One of the key takeaways and one of the areas that I think an organisation like DHL can help is in actually bringing best practice to a market like India. We have a lot of solutions. We have a lot of different healthcare specialists out there. There's an awful lot of different services that we have. We run a very large operation in the UK for the National Health NHS there. So again, that's more of a procurement-based service, but what it talks about is changing the market. We have an awful lot to offer in terms of footprint, and again, from a value perspective, we look at markets where we have best practice, have a look to see whether or not that can actually be something that can be shared with the environment that we're working in, and then bring the investment to play to help that come to fruition. So in this particular case, there was many areas in terms of the customer experience that we implemented. The customer segmentation was quite interesting because what we actually did was we created value for the manufacturer in actually understanding his customer, how his customers' buying habits were, but also too the amount of product that came through. So you could actually treat customer that was putting a lot of volume through your business a little bit differently to somebody that maybe wasn't spending as much with you, but possibly with somebody else. So the service levels and things like that were actually very positive from the end user, very positive from a CFA perspective, but also more importantly, very positive from a manufacturer standpoint because product was getting to market. We could also capture the areas where possibly stock was not available. We could understand the peaks at the end of the month and actually help manage some of those as well. I think in terms of the network, there are also other areas that we could look at. Obviously, there has to be a return on investment from any organisation. India represents an awful lot of opportunity to an organisation like ourselves, but we're also prepared to put investment into that. So in terms of network, we've also created a transportation area that can help with pharmaceutical product getting to end user as well. So key takeaway from here is that there is value in bringing best practice. There is value in looking at large organisations that possibly have some operations somewhere else, another geography that can be brought into the market, localised, and then add value to you as well. I mentioned investment. To this point, the organisation has invested over €200 million just in the infrastructure in India. You saw the first slide where there were quite a few different pillars of the organisation. This slide really just is a takeaway of different things that we've created to market. We were the first organisation in India to actually build a free trade zone. What that actually allowed us to do was to offer manufacturers, whether we're talking import or export, the value of bringing product into a zone where you weren't paying any duties or taxes. You could actually house it in an environment that had cold chain, if that's what you required, and then the product could be used, in the environment that you needed or the quantity that you needed. So again, first to market with that, pan-European transport. An investment that really came from the initial case study with direct to market. We saw that there was a gap, we saw that there was something that had to happen. So again, key takeaway here is that we have deep pockets, we are a large organisation, we've invested a lot, and we're also committed to invest a lot more in India. It's future for us as well, so I'd encourage you to ask us to push the boundaries. Domestically, most of you would know Blue Dart, the organisation that we acquired some time ago. They've invested a lot of money in a cold, temperature-controlled packaging and dry ice so that you can get product through to market even in a domestic environment in the condition that it's supposed to be in. So again, a lot of different things that we're investing in to help you get your product to market a little bit quicker and certainly in the right condition. Just a snapshot of who we are in India, 28 years in experience, 10,000 employees, so again, a lot of different people that understand logistics, and amongst those people, specialists within the healthcare environment. This was the study that we did with OPPI. It was an investment that we undertook to help understand the market and to make recommendation to Indian government. So to policymakers, we were prepared to make that recommendation because we think if we invest in your market, then you're going to become much better and we can be your provider of choice. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave you just to think about DHL. We are a large organisation. We believe that we have areas of reliability and expertise within the healthcare industry. We certainly work with a lot of the manufacturers, both Indian and global. I'd welcome you to start dialogue. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sui. And we request Satya Brahma to give the memento to her. Supply chain management is becoming more and more important, and DHL today contributing for many pharmaceutical industries on that. Thank you very much. Energy and enthusiasm brings the synergy in any personality. To talk on Neutraceuticals, we invite François Licoppe, CEO, Eubage Laboratory, Belgium. Please, sir.
So, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Satya, thanks a lot for inviting me a second time in a year to present the European OTC market and my company in front of such a big audience. Let me start to do a little bit of marketing, because last time I had the occasion to go through this part. So, we are a pharmaceutical company based in Brussels, in Belgium. We have developed 20 different food supplement formulation, mainly based on phytotherapy, so you find in there mainly dry extract of plants. But the major part of, I would say, our investment research has been into devising an enzymatic complex which do increase the bioavailability of a certain number of nutrients you do find into a formulation. And happily, I wouldn't have the time to go into details about this enzymatic complex, but it attracts a lot of attention here in India as in Europe and other regions. We will not go through all those 20 products. You just have to know that we are covering by now 8 different therapeutic areas, from liver to inflammation, from menopause to diabetes. We are active in quite a lot of fields that could be treated thanks to plants, thanks to herbals and botanicals. We also differentiate a little bit by our marketing. Our marketing is also of importance even in the healthcare sector. So you see on that screenshot some of our boxes. All of them are the same. They are light blue with a metallic sheen with a number, so it's easy for the customer to be recognized. They are Eubage number 1, Eubage number 2, till Eubage number 20, with the claims just under our name. So to make it in a nutshell, I think that the company does differentiate by its scientific advantage, so this enzymatic complex, by a therapeutic advantage, because we have a lot of different molecules, active principles into all of our formulation, till 8 of them, compared with the competition we normally has 2, 3, or 4 of them, with marketing differentiation points. And what of importance, and we'll come to that, it's about regulatory. We do comply with all the new regulation about following the EFSA. EFSA is the European Food and Safety Authority in Europe. We've already been talking about regulation. Regulation is a very important point, and we are focusing on that also. So to come back to, I would say, a more general topic, the subject I have to address this evening, let me try to define a little bit what is the OTC market, because it's quite complex. OTC does mean over-the-counter. But you can find medicine which are over the counter. So some medicines are not under prescription. But normally, besides of the medicine which do not need prescription, what do you find under the labeling OTC? It's the nutraceuticals, where our company is active in, but also what we call vitamins and dietary supplements, what we called also traditional herbal medicines. There could be some confusion between food supplement and traditional herbal medicines. I wouldn't have the time to make the distinction between all of those subsegments, but you have to know that they are not a big player in that market. It's not like in the pharma market where you have giants like Pfizer, GSK, and the Sanofis with a big market share. In the OTC market, they are very fragmented. Here on a worldwide basis, following the latest statistic, if I'm quite well, is Johnson & Johnson, which is the market leader on a worldwide basis with 5.2%, which is quite low. You go to India, you go to Belgium, you go to a different part of the world, everybody has a small share of this market, but this market is growing, as we will show, and also this market is concentrating. There are a lot of merger and acquisition in that market. To give you a big picture, some facts and figure, this market, the whole OTC market is $110 billion a year. Europe's account for 38 of that, the US about the 36, 35, and the rest of the world for the rest. So it's 1/3 for Europe, 1/3 for the US, and I would say 1/3 for Asia. There are different definitions of the OTC markets. I've taken the one of Nicholas Hall, which is one of the major consulting agency active in that field. And they say that the OTC business do contain traditional medicine, cough and cold preparation, vitamins and minerals, and so on and so forth. So the definition can differ from one consultant to another, but I think that by now you have a more clear view of what is an OTC. OTC could be, would say, differentiate from the medicine from the drugs, even if some of those medicines could be considered as OTC business. What is of importance regarding the OTC business compared to the pharma business is that the OTC business for the last 4 years has grown by much more than the pharma business. You know that the pharma does come with a lot of problems finding new molecules. There are a lot of patents which does expire last year, coming years. And so since the past 4 years, the OTC business has increased by much more than the pharma business, and so the share of the OTC market in all the healthcare markets is growing from 10% to 12%, and this share will continue, I think, to increase. To come back to the European market, because it's the, I would say, topic that was my topic of today, you have also a lot of discrepancies between, I would say, the type the definition we can find over there, but also between the growth rate we have in Europe. As you may know, there are very major markets like France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, and they have, I would say, the newcomers, all the Eastern European countries, which shows quite a heavy growth rate, more than 15% of growth rate, so growth rates which are quite comparable with the one we can find here in India. The biggest market is Germany, but Italy is also a very good performer qua size in Europe. Italy does like nutraceuticals. So maybe there's not yet some member of the government, people from different ministries by the audience right now, but what is also of interest to know is that OTC business is also good for the health budget spendings. That's a study which was made by a US agency, but you could tell the same in Europe, you could tell the same with not the same level, but the same story could be also told in India and other countries. OTC business allows to, would say, decrease the share of spending for, would say, patients. Because it's allowed to avoid to go to the doctors, it avoids to take maybe more expensive medicines by taking OTC in a number of cases. I wouldn't say for serious disease, but in a lot of chronic disease, it could help the patient, of course. It would avoid him to visit the doctors, and so would allow also the budget spending on healthcare to be lowered. Just to come back once again about the definition not of the OTC sector but of the nutraceutical business. So the nutraceutical business is a part of this OTC business. Normally we define the nutraceutical business in 3 different parts. That's at least the way we are doing in Europe. There's the vitamin and mineral business, but with a high dosage, for example, in India, this business is not considered as nutraceuticals, as food supplements, but as drugs. So there are a lot of discrepancies between Europe, Asia, and even the US, even in the definition of, I would say, some of those segments and subsegments. We also normally find in that subsector plants, herbal preparation, botanicals, and other substances with nutritional and physiological effects. So what's of importance to tell you also is that there are more and more research being performed in the field of the nutraceuticals. So you find more and more publication in scientific journals, in the JAMA, in Elsevier Medical Journal, and so on. You used to see 1 or 2 studies about botanicals 10 or 20 years from now. Now you have dozens and even more published on a monthly basis. You have to know that still by now, 60% of the drugs do copy the molecule that you find by modern nature, that you find in the plant and in herbal preparation. And certainly you know that the first blockbuster of the pharma industry, the aspirin and penicillin, do come from, I would say, modern nature, also do come from some plants. So this business is attracting a lot of attention, not only from food supplement players, from nutraceutical players, but also from pharma players, because those pharma players, as I told you, have more and more difficulties to discover new molecules, to develop new things, and so it's easier for them to bring to the market some nutraceuticals. As I have to focus on Europe, I will go through a bit very quickly on the main part of the regulation regarding this business in Europe. It's quite complex, it's quite evolving. It's also evolving in India because I've heard that by the end of this month there would be a draft proposed by ministry regarding asking for public opinion regarding the new regulation on the food supplements. We've been told that very recently in Europe because maybe I've already told about the EFSA, European Food Safety Authority. They have now asked for some claims to be recognized as positive or negative. So there have been more than 2,500 claims which have been considered as being negative and only 222 as having been considered as positive. So by now, food supplement manufacturers in Europe could only use those 222 positive L claims, and all the rest is suppressed. I think that's something good because it gives some more credential to the food supplement market, and I think that it's a positive point, and even if regulatory could be a hurdle, it also could be some kind of opportunity. I will not go into the details between, I would say, what is harmonized and not harmonized in Europe, but you have to say, you have to know that plant business, the herbals, the botanicals, are not harmonized on a European level. It means that some herbals, some botanicals could be considered as food supplements in Belgium, Italy, France, for example, and the same could be considered as drugs. So it increased the level of difficulties, and so you could not market the same products all over Europe. I've already addressed this point, so about the negative claims and the positive claims. Happily, all the botanicals are considered by now as being either not positive and not negative. They are on an on-hold list, and by being on an on-hold list, they are still authorized. And so as we do use a lot of those botanicals, we are quite happy and quite lucky because the claims we use to have are still available, and we can still use the same claims as before this legislation. To focus on the nutraceutical business, the food supplement business, I told you that the OTC business was $110 billion. The nutraceutical business on a worldwide basis is $45 billion. Same would say segmentation, 30% for the US, 30% for Europe, and 30% for the rest of the world. Biggest markets, Italy, Germany in Europe. The growth rate, I already tell about this, bigger, of course, in the Eastern European countries. And you could notice that inside the European countries themselves, the botanicals that are the most well marketed are very different from one country to another. It's depending about the legislation, it's depending about the habits of the different population. German and the French do not use, honestly, the same type, would say, of formulation. And so it's also make a market which is very fragmented, which is not well harmonized, and which is much difficult to be entered. Also concerning the distribution channel, that's of importance that those distribution channels also are varying from one country to another. For example, if you could only enter the market in Belgium by going through the doctors, in France, for example, it's mainly done through the pharmacist and the parapharmacist, even through the supermarket. In the US, it could be totally different. You could already penetrate the market through internet. In other countries, it's mass media, it's TV campaigns, so the distribution channels for those different type of products could differ by a big way, given the country we are talking about. The biggest, I would say, sub-segment in this nutraceutical market are also different from one country to another. I took here the example of France. In France, the biggest sub-market is weight management, but this market is decreasing because there were quite a lot of problems with some weight management formulation, and the therapeutic kind of formulation are, on the contrary, on the increase. So preparation which do treat cholesterol, which do treat diabetes, which do treat a problem with your eyes and something like that, do have a very big increase, and the one which were more common, like weight management, are on the decrease. So just to finalize with a quick look on India and its positioning, this chart shows the increase in value. That's the blue bars of different, the biggest market for the coming 5 years. India is in the latest position of this chart, but it's still number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, number 10, which is not so bad, and you have the red bullets, which is showing the growth rate, which is nearly 10%. So certainly, even if the food supplement nutraceutical business here in India by now is quite small, it's $200 million if you do not take into account the vitamins and the minerals. It is a market which is growing quite rapidly, and a lot of companies here, even pharma companies, are having a look into this nutraceutical business by now. So I do not know if I have some time to take questions, but I think, but thank you, Satya, for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, François. And I request Satya Brahma to give the memento as a token of love and affection. Some people are born smart and beautiful, but some people can be made smart, beautiful, handsome through facial aesthetics. Ladies and gentlemen, Pharmaleaders invite leading personality in this field, Dr. Shubha Dharmanna, cosmetic dermatologist, laser specialist, hair transplant surgeon, CEO, Dr. Shubha Skin and Laser Clinic, to speak on innovative trends in facial aesthetics, Indian challenges with global experiments. Dr. Shubha, please.
Thank you for that kind introduction. Hi, a very good evening to all of you. Quite a few inspiring talks we've had today. It feels quite intimidating, but I'm quite thrilled to be present here, thanks to Mr. Satya Brahma. I have a very challenging topic, and I